of people are scared even about launching a website that isn't e-commerce, and then e-commerce adds an extra layer of complication. And I think it's intimidating because it's dealing with money and transactions and security, and people don't want to be caught out in that scenario. So firstly, I would say that if you're going to work with someone, make sure you've got a clear idea of how you're going to manage the site. Because if you're dealing with a transaction for a customer, it's really good that you've got complete control over being able to do refunds and understand the process. So make sure that you've researched the systems that you're planning to use and that is going to work for you and your team within your business. So common ones include things like WordPress with an e-commerce plugin, something like WooCommerce, or Shopify, and both of those are excellent options. They're what I call kind of a minimum viable shopping environment. You can use PayPal, you can use Stripe, so they're easy to get into and they take care of the complicated technical part of transactions. It's already been built, you don't have to build it. If you feel like you'd be confident to manage everything to do with your website, including the transactions, WooCommerce is free, and of course you're not paying any commission. If you're someone who'd like a bit more reassurance that you've got more support, something like Shopify is great, but you will be paying them some commission. But either way, I'd say don't be scared of it. Just be confident that you perhaps ask for a test or a demonstration, or find somebody who already has a store and who are confident about managing it themselves and have a look. But for somebody just doing it, those are the two things I'd recommend above all others. I think what people get confused about is whether a web designer is someone who can make something look aesthetically beautiful, which is obviously what everybody wants, especially anyone who's creative or creates a beautiful product. You want it to have a beautiful home, or whether they're more of a developer who's very good at the technical side of things, but maybe not so good aesthetically. So I often work with people or have customers who've been frustrated on one side or the other. They've worked with someone who called themselves an all-purpose web designer, and they made something beautiful, but the back end was very difficult to manage and they can't make changes themselves. Or they have someone who has made a technically easy to use site, but it looks horrible. So when you speak to a web designer, just try and find out which category they fall into. Not every web designer will also do brand, and very few developers who are much more technical will do brand. So I think it will work better to invest your money in someone who is purely creative to create a set of lovely elements, and then be careful whether you're hiring a web designer or you're hiring a web developer. Just know the difference and question them quite closely. Nobody will mind, I promise you. We'd much rather work with clients who want to use our particular set of skills. The other thing, which is probably my top tip when it comes to choosing a website, is it used to be that it was very difficult to build your own website, and you'd have web developers who told you it was very difficult and it cost thousands of pounds to have a custom website. That's all changed with things like WordPress and some fantastic themes out there. It's very easy to do it yourself. So often people will come to me and they'll say, I worked with a web designer, I don't really know what they did, but they used WordPress. And when I reverse engineer the site, I can see what that web developer has done, has actually just bought a theme off the shelf that costs 60 or 70 pounds, and they've customized it and presented it as something that they've built, which they have built it, but that kind of process really should be under £1,000 unless you have some wild technical demand. If someone's charging you kind of £3,000 or £4,000 and upwards just to customise a theme, then that isn't the person for you. But I would say, actually, I use what's called a page builder theme or structure for every site, and I'm very clear about that. And the reason I do that is because this is a tool that's going to be endlessly supported and grown, and I would rather the experts who built that tool did that, and I use their wonderful tool. But I'm very upfront with clients and I say, because I'm using this tool, the price point is a lot lower. So I think have that really frank discussion and don't be fobbed off with, well, I'm not sure what I'll do, I'll maybe customize something for you. You need to know what you're getting, and you need to know which theme they're going to use, if they are going to use one, and find out why. It's not about long hours, which is the good news, but it is about investing in good systems. So make sure you invest in decent hosting. So for example, a lot of people buy their domain name and then buy hosting from that same company, and some big names like GoDaddy or Bluehost or One-on-One or cheap names, So these places are great for buying domain names, but they don't provide brilliant hosting. Maybe, well, I was going to say don't quote me on that, but you kind of will. But I would go for, have a look at reviews. WordPress themselves recommend five companies, I think it is now, and I use one of them for my hosting. Make sure your hosting company has systems that you like to use, so a control panel. They're easy to get hold of by ticket, live chat, you can phone them. And I would just make sure that is the first investment you make. The second investment is invest in a really decent backup backup tool. Now, I use something called Blog Vault, and not only does it back up my site every 20 minutes, it looks for any changes and saves just those changes. So it's not going to get stuck, or the backup's not going to fail, because it's just consistently backed up constantly. If my site, something happens to it, I can restore it with one click, and it also alerts me if there's any compromises to security. So I've got a fantastic tool that does all the work for me. So it sends me an email if something needs updating. So once a week, I probably spend 10 minutes on it, and I know my site's safe and I know it's up to date. But you only get the confidence to do that if you've got a good tool making your site safe and secure. So with decent hosting and a great backup system, you've got absolutely nothing to fear, and you don't necessarily need to pay someone to do it. But I have some clients who I do that for, because they still don't want to do it themselves, and that's fine. But don't be afraid to do it yourself. It's not hard to learn.